What if we could remind you that people are inherently good and capable of great peace when you're designing your legacy? I'd like to welcome Joe to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely Friday morning. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, Angelina.
It is a pleasure to host you. And are you joining today from Austin, Texas, or the East Coast?
I'm actually in Chicago right now.
Oh, Chi-Town.
Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, would you share a little bit about yourself with the listeners, whether it's professionally, regarding your Marine Corps background, or personally, in what brought you to where you are today in your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised on the southwest side of Chicago, like right on the cusp where the suburbs begin and the forest begins. Little interesting mafia town. And I got involved with a really just horrible group of older people when I was at a really early age and started doing really hard drugs. I was snorting coke by the time I was 15, maybe even 14. I don't know, I forget. But was putting needles in my arm by the time I was 17 and lived that way until I was 19 when I saw my best friend graduate Marine Corps boot camp. And I turned to his little brother. I handed him two fresh packs of cigarettes and I said, I'm joining the Marines. And 1 year later I did. And then my time in the Marine Corps was fairly interesting from '06 to 19 and deployed 7 times. And I was a part of the initial wave of Marine Special Operations personnel. So the Marine Corps started their special operations teams back in 2006 or 7. So by 2012, I was over there and had a pretty rough transition out. A lot of survivor's guilt, a lot of prescription medication, a lot of concussions and brain injuries. So almost took my life quite a few times, was homeless, was broke, and then I learned about personal development, the power of the mind, and really quickly flipped it all around. So love life, try to make as big of a positive impact as I possibly can every single day. And I do that by teaching people how to be safe against violence.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, share a little bit more, if you would, about both the good and the bad experiences growing up before joining the Marine Corps. I know that you had shared that, you had crossed paths with even some organized crime, some mafia. I mean, that is growing up really quick in terms of knowing what this world is about sometimes, and I think you've also mentioned that the United States is in a bubble because overseas, they'll just cut your hand off.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the way that my town was structured was really strange. It's was founded by mafia, it's run by mafia, they call it the outfit over in Chicago.
The
And even
outfits.
if, yeah, the outfit, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then even up to 1992, our police chief, for example, was convicted of accessory to homicide for the Cook County prosecutor's wife, who was a dean at the local university. So that just gives you a small idea as to the level of depth that corruption goes. And I wouldn't say I was ever really confronted or involved with it as a child, but more or less as I grew older, I looked back and I was like, oh my God, the billiards room. No wonder why there's always a bunch of old Italian guys in there. And so things like that just really started to stick out and resonate with me. And it was cool. We had woods in the area. My friends and I played there a lot. I had a really close group of friends and we hung out on the tracks and all the time. So ultimately we had a pretty fun and pretty not really productive childhood, but we forged some really solid bonds.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for the level of honesty and sharing and the depth. I know that oftentimes people experience what you've talked about, crossing paths with drug use and depression and anxiety and survivor's remorse, and even just uh, the number of veterans today, like and yet thank you for being a voice to that. I know that one of the things you also mentioned was that your best friend, when he was injured with the Marine Corps, the first thing when he went to the Veterans Affairs Hospital, they threw painkillers at him. And so you're
Yeah.
watching from a distance and you're thinking to yourself, is all of this adding up? And then what choices do I want to make in personal agency?
Yeah, so as the years progressed, yeah, John had some back issues and it was right when oxycontin first started coming out. And I remember because he gave me one once and I just took it and I remember waking up the next day and I was like, "Oh my God, like I feel this crazy urge to find more," which was weird because I'd been shooting up heroin when I was a kid. One night, I was sore, so he gave me one of these pills. I didn't even know what they were. And then when I woke up feeling that urge, it was literally like a demon was inside of me trying to get me to go get more. And that was concerning. And I asked him about that, and he just shrugged it off. And then unfortunately, they threw these things at him like crazy. He got super addicted to them really quickly. And then what's ironic is that the VA doesn't provide a detox program in the Chicago land area. At least they don't. And I don't think they do anywhere. They'll provide a rehab facility if you've already been detoxed. But it got so bad to the point where he was literally lying on the floor, screaming and crying in the middle of the VA office, um, saying, "Somebody please just help me." And nobody would help him. And ultimately he ended up dying.
Yeah, yeah. My condolences. I know that one of the good things that have come out of that is you were able to marry his sister and all of the positive influences that he has brought in terms of even introducing you to the Marine Corps, which then brought you discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe in the fundamental fact that everything is energy and we cannot create nor destroy it. We can only transfer it. And I do believe that he's present in some form or fashion. And I'm very thankful for, the years that we did have together. And it is kind of funny because now I get to tell people that I waited until my best friend died before I slept with his little sister. So it's kind of a little bit of dark humor for some people out there.
But bump.
Yeah.
So, in speaking about the remedy, so thank you for speaking into the problem because I think that's where a lot of humans get trapped and stuck. A lot of times we don't know how to overcome the bear traps because we don't have these conversations oftentimes at the kitchen table or the dining room table. And it cuts across all classes. I mean, the number
It
one
does.
thing regarding the affluent community right now is not just the conversations around longevity, but access to drugs because of the pressure that
Mhm.
they're under. So they're, the next gen, the rising gen, are falling into these bear traps regarding drugs and there's not enough conversations that are speaking to both the problem as well as to the remedy. So let me ask you, how did you cope with PTSD as well as feeling that demon in your heart from the oxycontin?
Yeah, so the PTSD thing, the post-traumatic stress disorder, I feel like everybody always is going to tether something to a past event that was highly emotional, whether it's good or bad. And that's a scientific fact as well in neurology, when the way that we experience highly emotional things creates a very strong neural network in the brain, sheaths it in myelin. And so, yeah, I had a lot of experiences in my life that were in war zones and dealing with people dying and the way the wind hits my face or when I smell jasmine blowing in the air. Yeah, there's things that, come up to me. Um,
And you
with
did
the,
7 deployments. And out of curiosity, where did you travel to?
yeah, travel. I like that. But yeah, it was Syria, Iraq, a couple times, Afghanistan a couple of times. And then I did some there were supposed to be humanitarian type operations in Southeast Asia, but they just turned out to be uh there was a cyclone that came through Burma, killed like 50,000 people, and we just sat there. The junta wouldn't let us help the local population because they keep them oppressed. But it's I don't want people to think that they have to be bothered or tied in or locked in a box to their past events because we don't. We have the power to change our mind, to change our brain, to change the way that we view things in the world, and to use that for our benefit. I'm going through a thing right now with some insane fraud, like insane fraud. These people are just psychopaths. But I've been telling myself again every day, and there might be people losing money whose moms are like dying of cancer, but it's all about how you view it and your perspective on it and what you attempt to learn from it. So for post-traumatic stress, I would just encourage anybody to believe in themselves that they don't have to be tied to that. And you do physical exercise, you change your environment. There are things you must take action against. You can't just sit there and be like, "Oh, I'm not tethered," because then you're just going to sit there and wallow in your thoughts and your emotions and you have an unhealthy body, an unhealthy mind. So there are things that we could do to move ourselves through that and to create and transform a new human being. So I guess I would say that that's how I would deal with all of my life's challenges. Um,
Yeah, I want to interrupt for a moment and I'm
yeah,
going to dance lightly on this since we're going to be on YouTube in the future. So I
yeah,
think there was also an awakening when you realized that your efforts were on behalf of BlackRock or the bankers and realizing that you had your courage on the line in order to fill other people's pockets and profit and balance sheets. And
yeah,
so I bring that up only because when you're thinking about overcoming You had mentioned that when you exited from the United States Marine Corps, there was the alcohol and the pills, and then to ask yourself, what did I do all of that for? And so, on one
Yeah.
hand, you loved the discipline because you said, getting yelled in your face had you stand up straighter. And so there was a positive aspect, but I also am curious in terms of reconciling. I'm curious how you did reconcile, or if you are still reconciling, or is such as life, is it
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
done
no,
with?
I wouldn't say that I'm that easygoing about it. Yeah, there was an experience I had, well, multiple experiences on all of my deployments where I just kept looking around asking myself why we were doing what we were doing. Why did we occupy this country? Why were we helping these people who didn't want our help? Why were we working with child molesters? Why were we wasting all this money? And you see all the waste with the contractors taking place. And that was just, I couldn't understand why. I just figured it was money, and that's how government worked, and that's people getting rich and political corruption. I didn't understand how sinister it truly was at the core of it all, where one company owns all the major weapons manufacturers in the world and keeps stimulating conflict within different regions. And they're selling weapons to both sides. They're just making a killing off of this. Trillions of dollars. Yes, trillions on
War is a
global war.
racket.
What's that? Oh
War
yeah,
is a
war's a
racket.
racket. Yeah, I think Smedley Butler said that, right?
Yeah.
Two-time Medal of Honor recipient. So, um, how do I reconcile with all that? I there were a lot of bad people and there was a lot of evil. Of course, it originated from the people who wanted it to be created to begin with. And so I don't necessarily feel anything bad about what I've done at all. What I do now, though, is, you know, people like me are government's biggest worry. That's why they want veterans to be dumb and drunk and over-medicated and killing ourselves at, 22 a day, 8,000 a year. They want us to be shattered and broken and disorganized and kill ourselves. We're doing their job for them. They fear the veteran community, especially combat veterans that are specially trained, because if we were to be a threat to their control, we would be, without a doubt, the single greatest force that could ever easily and swiftly take them the hell out. I mean, there's nothing in the world greater than a US special operator. And I use that skill set and that ability to become a force multiplier and help everybody in this country. I want to bring everything I've ever learned here to the homeland. I want to teach people how to be safe against violence, how to stand up for what's right, what is right, how to build mental and emotional resiliency so they don't get manipulated by the psyop warfare that takes place every day, all around us. I want to help people see those things with great clarity based off my experiences overseas and the things that I've done. And then I want to teach them how to stand up against them.
Yes, yes. I want to just share a quick personal story before I comment on what you just shared.
Yeah.
My husband had served, and one of the things he mentioned was how much the soldiers in the Royal Canadian Air Force loved to give the children school books, crayons, pencils afterwards. And so to hear you say that, it's like, how different are you than that person in Afghanistan that we're told is the target or the enemy?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I think that being able to speak out about this subject, in a sense, can take down some of those fences and those barriers of looking at someone else and, what they call othering them. Well, that person is other. They're different than me. They're the other. And it's so
Yeah.
easy to fall back into that. And so what I wanted to say, and thank you for letting me share that story. What I wanted to share was, you took some of the toughest moments and you realigned them to then find your true self to rise above. And I think that is one of the most important key points, I think, in today's podcast conversation, because whether somebody is, a next gen family member or they were a soldier, it's to find that true self again, not what other people put up in terms of mirrors to tell that person, well, this is your identity, just because that's how they're
Yeah.
treated. And
Yeah,
they feel trapped
absolutely.
in that world.
Say that again.
And they can feel trapped in that world, their world, like you had said. It's
Oh,
a
absolutely. Because you get a label put on you, and we're always looking and searching for identity. And quite honestly, to be in alignment with the true self, and I talk about this all the time, where the true self is the greatest version of you, physically, mentally, morally, emotionally, financially, all things. It's difficult. It's not easy. But what is easy is to accept somebody else's label of you because you can rely that on that as an excuse to be like, oh, well, I have PTSD, or oh, well, I'm lazy, or oh, well, I'm just big boned and born overweight or something. It's so simple for us to cop out and just accept that. And it's so hard for us to be real with ourselves and to push ourselves forward. But the beautiful thing about making that progress after you have that realization is that humans find contentment in progress. And there's nothing that we could find more contentment in other than making progress on ourselves and what I call the realignment of the actual self into the true self. And once you start making momentum, it's like a rocket ship. It requires the most thrust at first, but once you break past the Earth's gravitational pull, I mean, you're free floating. And that's what's so awesome and beautiful about life is that after you reach a certain point, yeah, there's struggles. You're going to run into solar storms and meteors and, whatever alien life forms or if they're out there. But it doesn't mean that everything's just going to come crashing down. You're such a new person. You're capable of gliding and moving with so much more ease throughout life that you get to accomplish so much more. And that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I also wanted to circle back to something you had shared in a prior podcast about oftentimes the addiction to drugs could be rooted in feeling purposeless. And so I'm going to
Oh,
pull
yeah.
up designing a legacy for a moment, because when somebody can design a legacy, that can also add another layer of purpose in their life, no matter their age or where they are in this world. And so I thought that was a really good insight, because a lot of times you said the problems stem from being purposeless.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really a lot for veterans too is where I see it the most. Well, I see this in everybody equally because I've been very, very suicidal in my life. I've used every drug that you could think of or name, and I've lived in those types of moments of life. And it wasn't like I just did it once. That's who I was. And so the embodiment of that was I had no purpose in this life. The time I was most suicidal in my life was when I had no purpose. I felt like nobody cared. And when I talk to other people who've been suicidal, or you look at my friends who've all killed themselves or anything else, it all stems from that purposelessness. Veterans get out of the military, they have all this purpose because they're got to be somewhere and people rely on them every single day. All of a sudden, they're just sitting in an empty house or in the grocery aisle by themselves, listening to the elevator music or something about COVID. Or sorry, I should just say shots. I don't want this to get canceled. But yeah, so I think that we must have a purpose as human beings, and that's why we're such social, community-driven creatures, is because it provides that value.
Absolutely. One of the points you made also in prior podcasts, you asked, "Who are you when all of your resources are depleted?" I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh,
Who are you?
yeah."
When you're stripped and you're absolutely bare and naked and you cannot even look at yourself in the mirror, you have to use your own mind and imagination to even envision what you possibly even look like. And when you can't distract yourself with anything else whatsoever, not even the sound of a buzz from a light bulb because it's just dead silent, that will absolutely test you. What do you do when you are $260,000 of debt that you literally lost over the course of 3 months because you were ripped off from people who you put trust and faith in, and you have a newborn and your wife is looking at you and you don't know if you're gonna have to foreclose on the house or not? Who the fuck are you? And sorry if I can't swear,
Well, that's
but
okay. I think YouTube allows that.
yeah, I mean,
Or I can have a video editor take it out. One of
but,
the points also that we chatted about in the preamble, which we politely disagreed on, is you said adversity is the best thing, and I don't want any more adversity in my life. But would you
mm,
speak more about that?
yeah, so adversity is, well, it's the best and it's the worst thing, right? But it's however you choose to view it. So if you're suffering, for example, I work out every morning and I don't want to ever. I actually get really, really angry and I hate being angry. I just don't want to live my life that way. But I force myself through that physical and mental and emotional discomfort because that's where growth comes from. And if you inflict adversity upon yourself daily, then you're that much more adapt to it whenever the external world and the external environment inflicts it upon you. And the stronger you are, the more simply you could change your perspective on what is happening to you to something more positive, which then therefore raises your energy, raises your spirit, puts your focus and concentration towards something positive and productive. And so then you end up crushing whatever it is that comes towards you. And it just makes you that much greater of a human being. So I think that adversity is the best thing because it's what allows us to grow.
I know, and you've shared that more skills come from adversity, but yeah, I think
True.
some
Yeah.
people would like an adversity vacation. Anyways, what have you
Mhm.
discovered personally about your brain, mind, and emotional balance?
So the brain, being the physical object, is comprised of three main compartments: the primitive, the emotional, reptilian, and then the human, like the neocortex, logical, outermost regions of the brain. The mind is, man, I still don't even really know, honestly, but it's like the spirit. It is the formation of the consciousness. And when you start looking at like the solar plexus and then the apex and like the neuron bundles that take place there, it's really wild. And when it comes to emotions, we are emotional creatures. Information goes there 2 times faster. So when I think about all that stuff, I learned about it in the traumatic brain injury clinics. I'd been concussed, was doing some weird stuff, and had some weird physical ailments. But what I learned was that neuroplasticity is real, and we have the ability to change the physiological structure within our nervous system. And I was like, that is wild. How is that real? What does that mean for every human being if we're nothing more than the creation of past experiences in this crazy neural network that has more connections than galaxies in the universe, and galaxies have more stars than we even know about? Like it's just so grand how many connections lie right here in between the head, in between your skull. And so anybody could literally change themselves spiritually, the mind, they could change their mind due to that physiological construct into anybody they want to be. Now, I don't think that people could just change their gender. Like, I don't think that makes any sense. I can't just turn myself into my dog. But from the sense of consciousness and spirit and the human and who you are, you could change anything. And that's why I really don't tie myself down to things like the PTSD.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things you also mentioned is about the brain, the emotional center, the brain thinks about first, is that a threat or is that not a threat? And the
Yeah.
rationalization then that follows regarding fight or flight. Would you speak a
Yeah.
little bit about that? Because I thought that was good.
Yeah. So in the process of learning about the brain and neuroscience and quantum physics and changing who we are, I started to realize that all of it was directly applicable to my time in the special operations community, learning about combat and reflexes and the fear-based. People say fight or flight. I say fear-based or love-based response because fighting is a love, an action of love, in my opinion. So when I started to apply those fundamentals to the physiological combative side of things, I really quickly realized I could train people very effectively by understanding that neuroscience principle. Emotion, things get sent to the emotional center of the brain 2 times faster than the logical. And our amygdala, the fear response center in the brain, says, hey, is this a threat? Is this not a threat? And if it is a threat, it goes to that sympathetic nervous system in the primitive part of the brain. But with good training, with good proper training and education and sensory stimulation and input, you could solidify the neural networks within the primitive portion of that brain, otherwise known as the subconscious. And the subconscious is a collection of our habits and our thought, whether it's a physical habit or a thought pattern habit. And so if I could penetrate the subconscious regions of a human being and get them to habitually think positive about themselves, positive about others, but then physiologically give them the ability to just respond in a successful defensive succession of movements, that's pretty damn awesome, I think. And so that's really what instigated the mission that I'm on.
Yeah, I wanted you to speak into that because I think if somebody is at rock bottom, wherever they are in their life, in their location, again, um, external circumstances, there's that thread that makes all of us human. And so for you to speak into this idea that we can create, even if it is just, whether it feels like it is just simply from nothing. So from nothing can come something, and maybe that's our ability as an artist, I might even dare say a magician in some senses, because, yeah, I mean, on the quantum sense. Suicide, you realized, was not the end, and regrets cannot come back. One cannot come back from regrets. So, what steps are you taking now to overcome, not going back there? I know you're happily married. You've got a wonderful dog, wonderful children. But say more, if you would, for anyone out there that feels like they've got that gray cloud above their head every day.
Yeah, so I don't do anything anymore, honestly. I will never go back to that because I've unlocked myself into this new category of existence. It will never. And I've had some insanely, it wasn't just like everything's great. There have been some insane, that $260,000 debt story that just happened to me. I just finally paid that off last month. And due to not focusing on the negative, focusing on the positive, I was able to do it in less than a year. So, my point to saying all this is that if somebody is suffering from that type of thought pattern, which is what it is. You think the same way over and over again. You behave the same way over and over again. You solidify that neural network into the subconscious portion of your brain. And you could break free from that, but you need to have it's you to summarize, you need to be emotionally driven because the Greek root word of emotion is emotus, which means energy, which is what we are in motion. So when we get emotional, we move towards the thing that it is we are getting emotional over, what it is that we want to accomplish. And if you keep getting emotional over the things that you're suffering from internally, then you're going to continue to move towards those things. So how do we get ourselves emotionally driven towards a progressive, worthy ideal? Well, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world by yourself unless you have a defined skill set. That's really what helped me out a lot. I said, what am I good at? I've been deployed all these times. I've never been shot. Maybe I'm pretty good at this whole shooting thing. So what could I do with shooting? And that's really what spiraled into this whole mission of teaching people to be safe against violence.
I want to
So if you,
interrupt for a moment. I just think that's so good that you took inventory.
oh yeah, you need
Yeah,
to.
keep going. Keep going.
And you need to be real with yourself too, but that's why it's so difficult to do it by yourself. Is because we lie to ourselves because it's painful. And if I can avoid that pain, i.e., avoid that adversity, like I think somebody was just talking about, um, it makes it easy for us to lie to ourselves. And so we fake the inventory. But I was at such, and that's why we always have to be at such a desperate point in life, is because I was done. I was falling asleep with the gun in my mouth, finger on the trigger, thinking about how the cleanup guy, I felt bad for him because he was going to have to clean up such a disgusting scene,
Yeah, I know
which
you
caused
mentioned that, and I thought that was compassionate that you cared about the about housekeeping.
well, that's weird. Nobody's ever told me that before. I never thought about it that way. Um, so a really good way to assist yourself in this whole process is to leave the environment. Get yourself out of there. If you can't be emotionally driven towards something, you need to get the hell out of wherever you're at and far and screw it. You're gonna die anyways. You're probably gonna end up killing yourself anyways. You might as well take the long shot. Find somewhere nice and peaceful where you can develop a skill, learn about yourself, take that inventory. And the new environment has new triggers in the brain. And so you're not being triggered into being the same human every single day that you have been that you hate. So get emotionally driven towards a purpose of some kind, preferably one you have a skill over that you could help other people with, and then change your environment. And if you can't change your environment, you need to work out. You need to work out. You need to work out. I cannot stress that enough. You don't need to be some crazy, super jacked, roided out freak. You don't need to be some, a CrossFit all day, every day type person. You just need to move your body because you need to expend that energy. Otherwise, you're just going to end up inflicting it upon yourself.
Yeah, well said. I want to bring up something that you had mentioned regarding the rawness of honesty. You had spoke about justifying laziness as well as mental and emotional illness in terms of the lack of self-identity. You talked about the promises that we make to ourselves and then we break them in lying to ourselves and the harshness of, are you getting fat and weak slowly or are you stepping up in your life? Would you say more about that? Because I thought you brought up a good point that in America today, it's almost okay to be fat, dumb, and lazy. And that's harsh, but better to say it than allow somebody to die slowly around us or who's listening. One of the expressions is, people live lives of silent desperation. So I wanted you
Yeah.
to speak into this.
Yeah, absolutely. Avoidance of pain, the acceptance of the label that we've had put upon us, the easy route of sitting on the couch and eating the chips and eating all the processed food.
With the
And don't
seed
get me
oil.
wrong, yeah, which, don't get me wrong, like the system has been constructed to a point now where it's literally designed to make you constantly ill. The goal is to keep you sick, not kill you, but just keep you like within this realm of sickness, of kind of sick to like super sick, but still surviving for as long as possible. I think the average cost of a medical cost for an American citizen is like $30 million over a lifetime per person. I'm pretty sure that's an accurate statistic, not positive, but when you think about that, it's insane. And so, how did we get here? 60% of people are diabetic. Like 60% of little kids are freaking diabetic. Well, it's because we're getting to this point now where generationally we're saying that everything is fine, everybody's okay, everybody's a winner, everybody's accepted. Look, nobody's saying that you need to go kill yourself because you lost the T-ball game. Like, but you lost. Maybe you do suck at baseball. Like I sucked at baseball. Good. I don't want to play baseball. Like I want to go do something else. And that's what allows you the freedom to go and do something about it. And when you get pissed off because you suck at something or when you let somebody down, that's when you have these great strides and these great periods of growth in life because that's the emotion that you need to drive you towards whatever goal. In that case, I suck at baseball, and if I really want to get good at baseball, I'll get great at baseball. You know, from the Marine Corps, I was an okay Marine. I decided I want to go be a special operations Marine. So I got pretty damn good and became a special operations Marine. You know, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if nobody told me I didn't suck at X, Y, and Z to begin with.
They didn't challenge you.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that people are hating you. And sure, there's people out there who are hating you, whatever. Who cares? You know, I can't help you if you cry every time I tell you something that I'm seeing because I care about you. Not saying that it's always going to be valid, but I mean, if you're 350 pounds, come on, bro. I got this guy in my class, he's like 37 years old, and he's a diabetic. A couple days ago, I was like, bro, what? I was like, come on, man. What are you doing? Learn about the garbage that we're being force fed because the system is set up this way.
Yeah,
And
choose differently.
yeah, and build that mental and emotional resiliency and that physical discipline because you're inflicting adversity upon yourself every day in your life by working out every morning. So you could not go buy the cheeseburger. I can't even eat that stuff. If I eat fast food, I can't even tell you. It's been 10, 15 years maybe since I've ever had some sort of fast food burger. Maybe I had some fries like 6 years ago. I don't even know. But it's crazy how it's just so damaging to our body, which causes a lot of mass violence in our society, by the way. And I've talked to nutritionists about this, very educated people, and they talk about the effects of the human condition and the psyche when we have so much internal stress beating us up all the time from the crappy food that we eat. So stop selling yourself short. You know, that's what I say to those people. Like you're better than anything you could ever imagine yourself being, but you got to put in the work, got to do it.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that. I think a lot of times people can self-abuse, and that's not necessarily the tragedy. The tragedy is all the people around them that see it and say nothing.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Well, and also their kids. Like, what if your kids think that it's acceptable to be 179 pounds at 6 years old? That's what are you doing? You're killing your child. You're hurting your kid. And
yeah,
then people will immediately fight me on all of this. People fight me back who don't want to hear this. And I tell people this that if you're getting emotionally evoked by something somebody is saying, there's probably some, like to you directly, there's probably some truth behind it. And it's because there's truth and you're emotionally and mentally weak. And so that's why you're allowing yourself to be so instigated or moved by
provoked,
whatever it is that they're saying. Yeah, provoked. Yeah, there you go.
buttons pushed,
Exactly.
offended.
So yeah, stop selling
Yeah,
yourself short, like find some truth and ask yourself if it's there and that if it is and you don't like it, go fix it. It's not complicated.
yeah. What motivates you today?
Going back to what you were talking about earlier with reconciling with things that you've done in your life and realizing what it was really all for. I think a lot of that does motivate me. I feel like I have a moral and ethical obligation to help people and to stand up against violence. If an active shooter started to happen wherever I was at, my wife already knows I need to go that way and you need to go that way. And there's been some experiences like that, not here stateside. I did some overseas contracting for a little while, right after I left the military and had some really insanely close calls over in Africa. But, for example, this one woman, I almost died helping this one woman um over in Somalia. Long story short, she put herself in a bad situation and I thought we were gonna die. And when I think about that, I had the option to just let her go. But I feel like I need to show people that we can help one another, even in those most dire of situations. And if you want to learn how to be that person who can do that type of thing, maybe you're not as ethically and morally bound to it as I feel like I am because of the things that I've done in my life. But I'll show you, and you could, and we can all make a really big difference in this world.
Yeah. Since this is a legacy podcast, what does this word legacy mean to you personally? What would you like your legacy to be?
When I think of legacy, I think of generations. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it or not, but I think about an extended period of time beyond your physical existence, where your physical your impact is felt, or your memory is still kept. And for me, I really just want it to be one of selflessness and integrity, and just, the samurai used to call it Bushido. It's the way of the warrior. And it was this series of tenets, positive mindset, loving action, making things neat. And that's really it, is I just want people to live life with contentment and happiness and growth and adversity and the ups and the downs and the lefts and the rights. And I just want them to just flow through it and embrace and feel every single second of it. Because the day is going to come where you won't be able to feel the cold rain on your skin because you're going to be in the hospital bed staring out the window. And I want people to feel that way when they think about me throughout the years. Feel that way when they think about themselves.
Let's see. Thank you for that honesty. If you were to set aside a weekend or two in the next year to design a hardcover coffee table book of your life's legacy, what lessons would be in its pages and or what 3 or 4 values would you honor? Core values.
I would talk about the law of vibration and how your thoughts control your frequency, which controls your actions, and how you could use that for your benefit, and how we're already constructed to have it work against us, but how you could use that for your benefit, also how you could change it. And if there were values, it would be things like discipline, selflessness, service, and I guess positivity, like integrity, like live a transparent life. When you have the opportunity to be dishonest about something, because I live my life with insane integrity and transparency, and I had lived my life that way, but originally not so much. And then I did, and then there was a period of my life, like leaving the military. I was just a really dishonest, horrible person. But nothing is better than when you live with absolute integrity, and you don't even have to worry about things going awry, because high vibration, positivity, love always vibrates at a higher frequency than dishonesty, greed, hate, shame. So live your truth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think time disappears when you get to be in integrity. You're in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not stressed out or anxiety over what people are thinking. You're doing you with good intentions.
Yeah. As we come to a close, is there any other thoughts you'd like to share on the subject of legacy? Do you have any legacy goals or any other final thoughts regarding what you're looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, right now I'm on a mission. I want to train millions of people in all 50 states, all across America. I want to leave an impact on the skills and empowerment of people so that they could have a positive impact on their local communities and their families, and then lead by example. So then the next generation picks up those same habits and it moves forward. And so I really want to provide a legacy of safety and security, and through empowerment, because you can never disempower and disarm people into, safety and security. You can only empower people into elevating themselves. And that's the mission I'm on.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Is there a
Yeah.
website if a listener or a viewer would like to learn more about you?
Yeah, joemalonetraining.com. So JoeMalone training.com. And I'm on Instagram a lot. Joseph Malone official.
Yeah, with your dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if you could just hear him. He's scratching himself now. So
I just want to take a moment to thank you for being a guest. I thought that you brought up a lot of great points, whether it's something we had shared in our preamble regarding if no one comes in to help you, you have to step up for yourself and
yeah,
pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And also energy goes where attention flows, I think was something you had said also. And just understanding that our 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 decisions either fear-based or love-based. I think that's a really good distinction to make, going back in terms of self-reflection to know what is it that is motivating our choices. So um, we can then choose to either become product of our circumstances, whether that's the environment or one's weight or again, things that could be beyond our control, but also realizing that we do have personal agency. And I also wanted just to share that I appreciate what you said about a legacy of safety and security. So well said.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to read my closing paragraph. And so thank you so much again.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This was cool. I really like it. And, we should really connect about doing an interview. I like your story a lot for next week. So are you going to hang up on me when you do this closing thing?
Nope, nope, I'm going to
Okay.
press
All right, cool.
pause.
All right,
So stand by. Okay,
cool.
so in closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I coach. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself in new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you're tuning in on SoundCloud, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Joe, for speaking into your legacy.